Hello and thanks for joining us on your channel of choice, Africa Independent Television AIT. My name is Mwaboze Njoka. It is my pleasure, always my pleasure, to welcome you to the signature show this particular Sunday. The weather in Abuja is getting agitated, breezy and hot most of the time, but quite windy some other evenings, a signal that the rains are about to begin. And for many Nigerian politicians, the rains are about to begin. Some of them may get drenched, while some others may get shelter and enter into political positions rather looking deeper. And that brings me to an online TV interview that was trending all throughout last week, where a politician from Lagos State admitted on television that corruption, using money and spoils of office to undermine or determine the outcome of party elections, is what rules Nigerian politics. He stated that when the chips are down, no APC local government chairman will queue behind the vice president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, to become the president, because those who have bullion vans and control the spoils of office will shepherd them to where they want them to be. And they dare not digress, lest they lose the spoils of office. When the issues matter and the need to know matters.
The chief of staff of Nigeria couldn't go to his village because it was being occupied by Boko Haram.
Politicians and political parties have massively used money to buy votes and to change the course of electoral direction.
You will also remember the very APC itself set up a Rufai committee recommending structuring doesn't mean anything. Go back to federalism.
Or the fun and the fair to relieve everyday care.
Life is a riddle, my son. The land bled when Uvorawen was put in shackles. Heaven wept when Saruwiwa was laid to rest.
Everything comes with the Judge Tufoni. Everything comes with who I am.
The Signature Show, your show that matters, on AIT every Sunday at 2 p.m. And where does the former governor of Anambra State, Peter Obi, want to be in 2023? On Thursday last week in Awka, the Anambra State capital, Peter Obi told traditional rulers that he was throwing his heart right into the presidential contest ring. Obi says he will unite Nigeria, improve security, and create the condition for investment inflow into our country. Peter Obi's failed principal in the 2019 elections, Atiku Abubakar, had on Wednesday, that is a day earlier, at an event attended by Peter Obi himself, told Nigerians that he would take another shot at the presidency. Now, Atiku also said he would use his skills in business to return Nigeria to real development. As a good deal maker, he would guarantee that investments flow into the country. Now, as candidates declare their interests and political parties are organizing their conventions and congresses, like the APC organized its own last Saturday, there is an unresolved legal issue surrounding the entire electoral process. The new Electoral Act signed by President Muhammadu Buhari makes provision in Section 84, subsection 12, barring some political appointees from voting or being voted for in a Congress. The president, of course, objected to that provision after signing the law. And Abuja High Court had stopped the president, the Senate, that's National Assembly, for removing that provision. Then an Umuahia court, concurrent jurisdiction, struck down that provision. So, which law is guiding political party activities? And if those barred by the law remain barred, as the National Assembly begins to appeal that Umuahia ruling, what becomes of the entire process? Can we imagine it? Well, the fate of the Electoral Act 2022 is the subject of our special report this Sunday.
Last week, there was a clear legal and political agitation over the judgment of Justice Evelyn Anyadike of the Federal High Court in Umuahia, the Abia State capital. Justice Anyadike, in a case on some alleged inconsistencies in the new Electoral Act, ruled that Section 84, subsection 12 of the new law was at variance with the provisions of the Constitution. She struck down that section. The Constitution states that any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is null and void to the extent of its inconsistency. Justice Anyadike, in citing many sections of the Constitution, ruled that Section 84:12 was at variance with the Constitution and therefore ought to be removed. Is Section 84:12 really at variance with the 1999 Constitution as amended?
It never talked about people in public service. It says people holding political appointments should not have the ability, the chance to go into party primaries, vote and be voted for while still holding their political offices. In my respected opinion, these two laws are not in conflict.
Before the court gave the ruling to remove that section of the Electoral Act, Justice Enyang Ekwo of Abuja Federal High Court had ordered the President, Attorney General of the Federation and the Senate not to make any amendment to the Act. The People's Democratic Party (PDP) had approached the Abuja court seeking the relief. Between the Abuja court stopping any amendment and the Umuahia court striking out Section 84, subsection 12, which is the binding judicial position?
The essence of the Electoral Act is to guide the process of our election, so that at the end of the day, there will be sanity in the system. The laws are very clear. The judge of the Federal High Court in Umuahia is looking at the whole thing as if it's one thing.
Section 84:12 of the new Electoral Act bars political appointees at any level from voting or being voted for at the Congress or convention of any political party for the purpose of nomination of candidates for any elective position.
Is that section of the Electoral Act, the way it is framed, by the words and the letters and the spirit behind it, is it inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution? The answer I will give to that is no.
However, sections 66, 107, 137 and 182 of the Constitution say any person serving in the public service of either the federal government or state government shall not be qualified for election into the Senate or House of Representatives if he or she has not withdrawn, resigned or retired from such employment 30 days before the election. While the 1999 Constitution talks about those in public service, it does not make any provision for serving political appointees, which the new Electoral Act 2022 Section 84:12 has covered. By virtue of Section 318 of the Constitution, political appointees are not included in the list of persons employed in the public service. But who is a public office holder and who is a political appointee?
They are people that are employed in the civil service of Nigeria whose appointments have statutory flavor and not appoint. You see, that's different from a political appointee who is employed at the pleasure of his appointer. He can be appointed today, this morning, and this evening he could be fired. Tomorrow he can be re-engaged.
The federal government, through the Attorney General of the Federation, AGF Abubakar Malami, who is a legal luminary, says it will remove the provision of Section 84:12 of the Electoral Act 2022, relying on the judgment of Justice Anyadike. But is it within the function of the AGF to remove the provision of an existing law, which has undergone legislative process and has been signed by the President? Or does it require a legislative amendment to do so?
If the Attorney General decides that, well, I have to obey this law, this judgment, because it cannot be set aside, he's on the right track. He's doing the right thing. You understand? But what is puzzling is his enthusiasm and the speed by which he's so ready to put this judgment into immediate implementation.
Why is the Attorney General, the law officer of this country, why is he so eager to expunge that section of the Electoral Act?
As the nation prepares for the 2023 election, there is the need to resolve the present ambiguity, if not confusion, surrounding the new Electoral Act to pave way for a smooth electoral process. In Abuja, Marvelous Abomano for the Signature Show.
Thank you, Marvelous. I hope the courts settle this issue so that we can go through the 2023 elections without any legal hiccups. Now, it is only speculation, but both online and offline, posters and commercials are running, announcing, justifying, urging the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to run for the presidency in 2023 because it should be the turn of the Igbo to produce a president. Meanwhile, the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, wears only Ishiago these days. And there are rumors that he will soon throw his own hat into the ring. But why is the Igbo presidency an issue? This Sunday, we revisit the question as we bring you back our conversation with Dr. Sam Amaje on this issue.
They challenge our jollof rice, our music, and our football. It is time to settle this rivalry. Two great nations, one ticket only to qualify for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And just one venue to support the Super Eagles against the Black Stars of Ghana in this winner-takes-all playoff finale. All roads lead to the MKO Abiola National Stadium, Abuja on March 29th, 2022 at 6 p.m. to defend our pride as we cheer the Super Eagles to victory. Tickets are on sale now from 2,000 Naira at nairabox.com. You can also point your camera at this QR code and follow the instructions to buy tickets directly from nairabox.com.
This afternoon, I have a friend, a lawyer, an activist, a technocrat, Dr. Sam Amade, conversing with me. Dr. Amade, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
A president of Southeast extraction. Why is it an issue? Indeed, should it be an issue?
Well, let's say, why should it be an issue? And say, why is this issue? First, I think if we go back a little bit, back in history to maybe, I think, 2004, and from 2002, 2004, 2007, Chief Ojo Madekwe, around about that time in the first tenure, I think, of President Obasanjo, when he was Minister for Culture and Tourism, I think, we addressed some Igbo gathering in Lagos and made this an unfortunate word which continued to haunt him. So he says, an Igbo presidency is idiotic. And when I confronted much later, when I became a special advisor and as foreign affairs and confronted with the idea, it came out that he meant that Igbo, we need a Nigerian president of Igbo extraction. But many Igbos didn't forgive him even until he died because of the dismissive way he treated the notion of Igbo president. And of course, there are many philosophical basis for which Ojo may have made that, seemingly dismissive remark. One is that we know that presidency of a country is an office that has general responsibility. So the Constitution envisages that nobody becomes a president except he is endorsed by not just a majority, but almost all the segments of the country. So when you talk about a quarter of two-third states, it means that you mean that he's going to have, he or she will have significant acceptability across the country. So in that sense, whoever emerges is actually in reality a Nigerian president, because Nigerians have all elected him, and he owes that responsibility to all Nigerians. And part of the presidential oath of office, for as well as for other public officials, is to discharge this job with his duties of his office without being unduly overburdened by considerations of ethnic, religious, or other social partisanship. But what happened in reality, and maybe more so since 2014, has been the use of presidential power as an exclusionary instrument, in which case, even though a president, more or less, emerges as president because he gets this two-third spread, reckons himself as a president of maybe whatever you call 75, 95, or 97 of 100. And then conceptually reduces the 3 or 5%, depending on what the arithmetic is, of the rest of the country to a subservient status of exclusion. So that conception of accountability, presidential accountability, of presidential responsibility, generates, as it were, a counter response of this, this ownership. We disown you. So they
are not our
president. Now, so what that generates in the long term is a quest for our president. So by error of commission omission, the Nigerian state has now been governed in a manner that suggests to everybody that in 4 or 8 years, you will have your chance to have the president for yourself. Take the bulk of it and give the rest to us. So every part of the Nigerian assemblage is into a competitive race to make sure they have their chance. So it matters because of the psychology of power.
Yeah, let me create this elevated intellectual perception of this presidency and where it comes from. Let us check the reality. Obasanjo, as you did allude to while we were just conversing now, was Nigeria's president for 8 years. Let me go back. Babangida was Nigeria's military president for a long time. Abdulsalam Abubakar, right? Sadana of Sokoto was governor of northern Nigeria. Tafawa Balewa, I will soon come back to him, was the the prime minister of Nigeria. Awolowo was premier. I want you to go to Ijebu-Ode. I want you to go to Nsukka, where Zik lived. I want you to go to Mina, where Babangida and Abdulsalam Abubakar still live. I want you to go to Daura, that has produced a president. Can you please go to Abeokuta, that has also produced a president? Can you go to Sokoto Shagari, that has also produced a president in this country? Is there any comparative developmental advantage those locations have enjoyed as a result of producing a president? And therefore, why this clamor for an Igbo president?
Obviously, not much, if any. Now, take Abeokuta, for example. I know that as soon as, I don't know what it is now, but as soon as Obasanjo left office, the road connecting Lagos to Ogun State, was impassable, totally collapsed. And it was the president who was very powerful for 8 years. We do know that the East-West Road
under Goodluck Jonathan
is still being a proposition. It's going on. He couldn't complete it. He couldn't finish off the amnesty. The Ogoni reclamation has not completed. So you can argue really that this is what they call a forced necessity, a forced narrative that if you have the president, they will gain more than ever a person. It might not be. Again, The real issue here is that elites benefit and proximity to people in power is an elitist game. So what does that mean? That if there's a president from, when Obasanjo was there, Martin, his in-law, was involved in power. Some people argue that what is now called the civil defense today came because Obasanjo was close to somebody close to him, had his franchise, designed something and put there, and what civil defense that probably shouldn't have been in existence came. So there are going to be those meets that people get because of proximity. And in a much more networked society like ours, modern age, your closest friends and colleagues don't need to come for your state. So you can see under Obasanjo and Anduba playing big. You see under Jonathan, Hassan Tuko, who was instrumental to multiple appointments, and maybe under President Buhari, we don't know yet. We might get to hear another shadow Igbo or Yoruba or Efik or Ijo person who is enjoying more access to power.
In other words, an elite game.
So the zoning stuff is it's our turn. It's an elitist game. It helps elites capture political power. So arguably, if the notion that the power should have shifted to the north didn't gain credence, Yolanda would have made it in spite of his usual 10 million votes. Those 5 million that he added to was because a large proportion of PDP's north, people who were the north was mostly PDP in spite of Buhari's consistent good run. He couldn't close the deal. But those PDP northerners were angered by the fact that Jonathan continued and didn't hand over power. And many of them moved away. A few of them undermined the ticket, even from inside. So you can see the elites are the champions of politics of sharing and of politics of turn by turn, because it's about them. So when the Sarakis, the northern leaders, articles felt that Jonathan will not agree to the zoning, and that would affect their chances, they changed game and brought Buhari. So they joined forces, the NPDP and the ACN and others came together and created what we have today as the Buhari presidency. One can bet that without that shift, Buhari couldn't have been president with his sizable, overwhelming, if you like, on an unusual basis, overwhelming support of the northern Talakawas. But he got in because there was this elite shift caused by the politics of zoning power. So at the level of elite contention, competition for resource, for access to resource, it matters to them. At the level of real development, it does not matter. What matters for real development is actually devolution of power, is actually local governance, strengthening accountability at the local level. And I've always argued, I tell my fellow Igbos, look, if you have three, it's always better conceptually to have three MRR in the Southeast and a Southern presidency twice. Why? Because when you have even as Nigerian power constitution is so centralized, there's still enough space for a visionary manager like Emma Wara, who probably is Africa's greatest technocrat, demonstrable, who took Southeast from a latecomer to a top performer. In a one burst of energy, they closed the huge gap of IGR between the Southwest and Southeast. In one burst of energy, he made Southeast a top performer in education. Over 40% was invested in education. The Emmanuel government first in Nigeria set up public libraries. First in Nigeria, public government aid schools. Most of the schools in the West you hear about are missionary schools, St. Finbar's, St. Gregory, blah, blah. But Emmanuel started building the first National College in BC, all those schools you see, built by MI government. So, and of course, the whole world said the Southeast economy was the fastest growing in the world in the 1963. Now, MI's magic was to localize interventions. It was to create a system of intervention that catered to resource maximization in the local area. So for me, really, what is developmentally more impactful is restructuring that allows greater optimization of resources and greater control of resources, and more accountability at the local level. The example from China, where you see coevolution, the Chinese model, people don't know, is democratic at the grassroots. At the upper level, meritocrat. So you see these CCPC chieftains coming there on merit. But at the local level, democracy. So that's actually the point, that development is a function of accountability and efficiency at the local level. But what is happening with the political zoning is that elite politics, elite contention, number one. Two, the psychology of power. So people feel excluded. People feel, oh, the North has had it, the Southwest has had it, South has it. So we in this geopolitics concert. So does that suggest some second-class citizenship? Does that suggest that we are now, we have dropped, we have moved from one of the top three to now inconsequential? So that is the trigger for agitation. That's what I call political psychology. And more often, it's more important. People talk about conflicts. Conflicts, if you look at the history of conflicts all over the world, they don't have reasonable objective basis. People,
sometimes emotional.
Emotional. So we talk about conflict entrepreneurship. People manipulate. People walk around this notion of nationalism, this notion of dignity, and transmute it into a grievance.
Yeah, Dr. Madi, just use the word now. This notion of dignity. There are a number of people in the social media who will tell you that the Igbo person in central institutions, federal government institutions, are disrespected on account of their having not produced a president. And that the issues in these institutions that are judged against the Igbo person just on account of the fact that there has not been an Igbo president. That if the South-East produces an Igbo president, maybe the institutions of the federal government will also begin to give to the Igbo person his due. Can't these institutions function as they ought to without the body language of who produces the president?
Absolutely correct. Now, you made a good point about, there's a sense in which there's the Igbo persons under siege in contemporary Nigeria. The rhetoric of inconsequentialism or inconsequentialism that President Buhari launched by virtue of 9-3 and dot, all these. You see, presidents have the power of communication. That's the thing that defines the president. What they now call bully pulpit. The president uses his language. Benjamin Disraeli, the Prime Minister of Britain, says, with words we govern.
Create people.
Yes, so we say with words we govern people. So the president's communication can change a whole thing. The president can create inclusion or create exclusion. The president can suggest to people that they are not reckoned as mainstream. Or the president can take a fringe people and mainstream them through language. So President Buhari's rhetoric fits into this trope of exclusion and victimization in two ways. One, it suggests to the average Igbo person that he is not considered mainstream. He's seen as outlier, different. These Biafrans, you saw when this crisis of IPOB by the federal government, some Nigerian institutions begin to Biafranize
even their own
Igbos, all their citizens. And by Biafranizing them, you are placing them on a category of citizenship that is object of ridicule and antagonism. Hate speech, that's what we call hate speech. So hate speech means you profile the people and put them in a particular bucket where they are not within the reach of state protection, rule of law. The incident that happened at the phone village, GSM at that plaza.
Yes.
With the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. And he was harassed. And it turned out it was not an Igbo man. It wasn't a Southeasterner. But when he was giving his report, he says, even in the press statement of his special advice assistant, he says, those Biafra boys. Now, what that means is that you are unleashing state coercive terror. He says, these enemies, these terrorists, so you have framed the people. And that's why some of us felt that, placing IPOB as a terror group had a collateral damage on the Southeast. But what I mean is that since you don't know who is an IPOB person in a precise sense, there's no register of names where we say, okay, this is IPOB. And you know that they are mostly youths from the Southeast. So the temptation to see all Southeasterners as IPOB and therefore terrorists is very rife. So that's why this very critical use of language, imagery, symbolisms by official, presidential, or state policy or communication is very important. That's what has created this siege of the Southeast. Now we saw the police ex-police officer who terrorized an ordinary person who bought property, market transaction in Kano. So we see what happened in the church where the priest says, "Oh, it's too much of you guys." Ordinarily the Catholic Church is a very sober and well-managed institution, but we saw the fracture caused by this demonization, this profiling. So the use of official communication to profile the people, to suggest inferiority, to suggest humiliation, works the other way around to instigate and inspire anger and a less than rational, if you like, fervor to get a presidential seat. So it's like a magic bullet. Some Igbos will not think, or some Easterners will think, just get a presidency, then we deflate and demobilize this, bubble of inferiority and of victimization. But that's not real. That's not real.
If the Igbo, the Southeast, get that presidency, can it solve this image, this demonization, this tendency to be lowered as a citizen, as a Nigerian citizen in national institutions?
It can solve in one sense, because it's a psychological bubble. It's deflated. So a bubble is a symbol. A bubble created by a symbol is destroyed by a symbol. So if you see the image of a Southeastern president, commander-in-chief, and doing well, then it recreates the sense that we are part of this equation. That's why it's psychological and it's important. And that's why in plural societies, arrangements are made to create diversity. The idea, like Trump, Biden says, want to have a Supreme Court that looks like all of us, is that when people look at the Supreme Court and they see a Caucasian, they see a Latino, they see a black man, they see a black woman,
and it
confers legitimacy on that institution. Oh, this is us speaking to us. This is us making rules for us. We'll go to the parliament and we'll see the man from Enugu East, the one from Adamawa North, the one from Calabar South, the one from Yoruba, Lagos East, all in chamber. It's just, this is the people's house. And that's a very important political issue. Then comes to the executive. And that's why I said the Buhari presidency largely created this unusual competition, unusual passion for presidency. Because it did what nobody did. PDP had a history. You can accuse PDP of competence or incompetence. You can say they're corrupt, not corrupt, but you can't accuse them of not being national. Under PDP, Obasanjo's 8 years and Yar'Adua's and Jonathan, you saw very careful effort to reflect that diversity in the executive branch of government. So you have a president under Obasanjo who was a Yoruba. You had a secretary of government who was cross-Siberian or Akwa Ibomite from the north, south. You had a chief of staff who was far north, a former general, consequential position. You had a speaker. The Senate president was a Southeasterner. So everybody shared in government, structure of government. And that's what political scientists call socialism. That means a system where you bring people, negotiate power, and create diversity and balance and shared power. And that's what I've been promoted. That alternative to zoning is shared power. Again, I'll come to that. But so, Yar'Adua did the same thing. He had somebody who acted like chief of staff. The principal secretary was David from the South. He had his vice from Bayelsa. He had secretary of government. Everything was spread out. Jonathan called that process. He had his chief of staff, He had from different places, secretary of government, different places, vice president, president.
So it was a Nigerian government.
A Nigerian government. Now, I think the Buhari error, whether intentional or life, idiosyncratic, was to scramble this and get the presidency that was too personalized and therefore sectionalized by default. If you personalize something, they're going to deal with people I know, people I trust. And then in that architecture of power, especially the security architecture, that's important for a country that's suffering so much, propaganda, conspiracy of Islamization, of federalization. The first thing that you want to be sure is security, that people trust the instrument of state power. And then in constituting that security apparatus, you deliberately or absent-mindedly excluded almost half of the country. The Christian community was missing at the high point. The South was largely missing. So you reverse that architecture that supports diversity and inclusion and therefore social trust.
You create this agitation.
So that increases. So we now feel if 10 people are killed in Ugoja, for example, or in Abia State, for example, and we didn't see immediate response from the inspection of police, we didn't see SSS, and stories start coming that, they were taken to the DSSS, I let them lose because it's a Fulani, because it's a Muslim, then people will not say, wow. So I've met as a lawyer, I've met young people, case I'm handling, and when you tell them, say, look, we're going to make sure justice is done. Say, which justice? So they have a closed mind that this system is designed, managed against us. So in that system, the only option is zero sum. Either we have that presidency or we have nothing. And so what we are saying then is, people who are marginalized like the Southeast, at least in recent times, when there's a sense of injury, then if you're going to it's legitimate to use political instrument, again, power, to say, okay, let's reassure this sector by giving them this opportunity. What that does, that since everybody has got it, southwest, southwest, north, if they have that opportunity, then you have defeated the psychology of exclusion. That is what created June 12. I was in June 12 when it happened. I was one of the lawyers who was also agitating. I was lawyer to Tyson Arena. I was lawyer to verify me as a lawyer, a young lawyer. Now, when 1999 came, Ogbonna was asked not to run. Okwadike was supposed to be the candidate of AD for South and South. At the Abuja conference, we were asked to step down. Udenta, who was secretary then, captured this very well. They asked to step down. Why? Because the nation figured out that there was an injury, which is the unfair, illegal stoppage of
Abiola's presidency.
And that generated a lot of quote-unquote alleged terrorism, the disaffection. Even the Tinubus, the Fayemis were part of that army of agitators. And so the Nigerian political elite consensually said, we're going to have a Yoruba run for power as a way of appeasing. So my sense is this, that political zoning should be an affirmative action. You deploy it rarely, only when there's a national perception of injury.
In the circumstance we find ourselves, do you believe therefore that affirmative action that the Southeast should benefit from it?
Yes, I believe that the only group, not South, I don't believe in a South zone, that is fraudulent.
I mean the South.
Yes, I'm coming to that. Any mention of zoning to the South is fraudulent because you don't zone. Zoning is not the right thing. A campaign should be open competition. But you only use affirmative action to address clear wrong. In the Nigerian structure now, I don't want to talk about the three major the tripod of Nigerian politics in terms of ethnic composition, because we know that there are 360 ethnic or more ethnic groups. But even in the geopolitical zone, in the South, the only people who have not held power is the Southeast. So affirmative action, zone as affirmative action will be to say Southeast have it. So what I'm saying is that you should allow politics as open competition. But when we think we need to zone, whatever it calls zone.
We have found ourselves in the present circumstance.
And we want to zone, which is usually a consensual political discussion. The only place to zone is South, is no other place. So you can't say power should shift between north and south. There's something like that. In fact, the geographical divide called north and south is problematic. And I tell you why, for two reasons. One, if you are from Enugu State, if you are from, let's say, this place we buy banana, no, banana towards Enugu,
Towards Nsukka.
Nsukka, what's it called? Obolafo.
Obolo.
You are closer to a Benue man in terms of functional closeness
Yes.
than somebody across the bridge.
Yeah.
Talk less of southwest. Now, Benue is in north central. That community, if you put a major hospital in that Benue,
Yes.
the person who access it is that poor woman in Obolafo who will cross with feet or on Okada and go there. Same for
functional.
Same for Kogi. So in a sense, really, North and South does not really capture the real existential issues around the Nigerian Federation. So if you say power should shift from North and South, they take it to Southwest that has done 8 years of presidency plus 8 years of vice president. You are not doing justice. So why shouldn't you go to North Central? What is really beneficial to a Southeasterner, that power is in the Southwest after 8 years of President. So if you make it open politics and the Southwesterner provides his credential and wins, it's fair than saying we are zoning to the South. So the argument is, if you want to zone, you must micro-zone
to seem to have bought into.
Then you should go to Southeast. If you don't want Southeast, for PDP says, oh, for example, we want to win election. I say zone is not based on political strength. We don't zone. Zone as affirmative action is not based on political strength. So when Biden says, I'm going to give you the Supreme Court justice, black American woman, he didn't look at their census figures. It's not about how many they are. It's about a perception of a need for redress. So if we don't feel there's a need for redress, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But if we feel that way, then numbers don't count. Again, if for any reason a party can't zone because they feel the argument is that it's a ruling party that should zone, that a party out of power wants to capture government. And I said, that's fine. But then you then have to structure what we call win-win, a shared power framework. That means you have to provide pre-election a structure that speaks to the Southeastern concern and say, look, whoever becomes president of Nigeria, apart from a notional vice president that may or may not go there, we are going to share this power this way. The Southeastern will be IG of police. The Southeastern will be Attorney General. We want to secure that fear of security. That's what a country does. Affirmative action. We are concerned that the Southeast youths are being killed and they are saying that the state is rigged against them. To give them assurance. So if we're not going to zone to them, they want to create a national politics. We can now say that we want to win an election, therefore we're going to go to North or we're going to anywhere we think we're going to win. But we want to recreate that dynamism of shared power. And so this is not a case of the president being a nice guy and saying our point. No, it's a case of understanding, written, known that once we win power, as of right, not as of my benevolence, you get the Inspector General of Police. The top guy, a competent fellow who can do the job. But what that tells you is that there's no conspiracy against you, state policing force, to destroy you people.
Dr. Madi, thank you for coming for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Well, all is well that ends well. 3 weeks ago, we brought you the story of Mrs. Modesta Ofobike, the woman who was honored for her integrity. Modesta Ofobike returned money forgotten in her restaurant bar by a customer, an amount far more than the rent she paid for that prisoner premises. A few months later, her landlord threw her and her children out because they could not pay their rent. This Sunday, we bring you the story of sunshine in Ofobike's life, as some Nigerians rally to ensure that her anti-corruption stance does not become a mockery for her. The story is anchored by correspondent Marvelous Obomanu.
I am standing right in front of the former resident of Modesta of Fobike, who was forced by the hard time to pack out of this very place with her 4 little children. Her business premises has been let out to another customer and another tenant. But if you want to know if honesty pays, or if the Nigerian society rewards those who stand up against corruption, then you need not to look out any longer.
This Sunday, we will rewind a tape. Corruption Tory Anti-Corruption Awards tape. On November 18th, our sister program, Corruption Tory, organized a town hall in Mpape, a suburb of the Nigerian Federal Capital Territory. At that town hall, Corruption Tory honored some Nigerians who have committed themselves to the fight against corruption. One of those honored at that event was Mrs. Modesta of Fobike, a mother of 4 kids who runs an eatery and bar in New Karu in Nasarawa State.
How much did they forget in your restaurant?
60,000.
60,000 naira. And if you have been to Modesta's restaurant, you will know that she needs that money to uplift her restaurant. We are presenting this to you, Modesta Ofobike, in recognition of your anti-corruption efforts. And we are doing this on behalf of MacArthur Foundation, our supporters.
3 weeks ago, we brought you the disheartening story of Mrs. Modesta of Fobike, who, because she could not pay the rent for her shop and one-room residence, was ejected from both accommodations. Her business collapsed even after she was honored for returning over 60,000 naira forgotten by a customer who patronized her. Her rent for her double-room restaurant and bar was 55,000 naira each, an amount less than the money she would not convert but returned to her customer.
Madam Modesta is a good woman for this place where we know. For the years we are don't stay here themselves. The good thing where they do, we are even like, I see those my engine where they grant this my whistle. If I leave her outside, I forget, go. Tomorrow if I come, it then my table, they wait for me. She's a nice woman, no?
She's a very nice woman. She always cook food and give to me. We cook food and eat together. Even I went for our house, I had to sleep there at times. We play together, eat together as a sister. Even if I don't have money for market, I will go and meet her. She now loan money to my market. When I say finish, I will turn it back for her.
She's very nice. Sometimes when I need something, I run to her, she will give me.
Anything we no get, she dey buy for us. Even though food no dey, she go find where she go get food so that she will give us.
As Modesta of Fobike was forced to relocate from New Karu to her village in Enugu State and subsequently to Onitsha, Anambra State, it appeared that honesty and integrity have no reward.
To my own side, I feel very bad because the thing happened when I'm not strong. And I was not in the market when the thing happened, so I cannot be able to do anything. I feel bad.
But the good book says, "He that endures to the end, the same shall be saved." This is the new story of Modesta of Fobike. After our story on her plight and the collapse of her business, with her 4 children having to be forced out of school, some Nigerians have been reaching out to Signature Show, encouraging her to never allow her situation to make her doubt the value of integrity. The deputy minority leader in Nigeria's House of Representatives, Right Honorable Toby Okechukwu, who immediately reacted to the plight of Modesta of Fobike, told Signature Show that the woman should stand up as a champion of a new Nigeria, where integrity reigns. He said, Modesta is a true example of what Nigeria and Nigerians should be.
There is no way to reward honesty and good work or good deed other than to support and reinforce it. We need to support those who are honest, because that is what we need in our country. And I'm happy that she's my constituent that's giving that example. I also want to encourage Signature TV to please, and MacArthur Foundation not to rest in their oars, to change the narrative.
As Right Honorable Toby Okechukwu called on other Nigerians who are committed to the war against corruption to rally round Modesta Ofobike, he made a surprise donation of 500,000 naira to begin her rehabilitation and show her that integrity has its reward.
On behalf of my constituents and my family, my wife, I'm happy to support her, to try to rediscover her bearing, to get her bearing with the sum of 500,000 naira.
Thank you. This is it. We make this donation of 500,000 naira to encourage you to continue to be an ambassador and a good Nigerian.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations. God bless you.
The executive producer of Corruption Tory and chief executive officer of Signature TV, V. Martin Obiora Ilo, while extolling the virtues of Modesta Ofobike, advised her to make good use of the money and to remain a worthy anti-corruption ambassador of Corruption Tory. Corruption Tory is a program produced by Signature TV and supported by the MacArthur Foundation to amplify the war on corruption in Nigeria.
The only debt you owe all of us is to put it to good use so that you can go back to work, go back to business, your kids can go back to school, and then you remain this wonderful ambassador that you are. And that what you have gone through this couple of months should not change who you are. At least you've seen that society remembers, they recognize your sacrifice.
I feel very happy because I don't expect this. I thank God. Even God will bless this man that bring this money for me. Everybody should doing good because you don't know where it will help you tomorrow. Because now the one that I do now, I do reap. If everybody begin to do good, Nigeria will be better.
I have vision, oh I believe. I know I can count on me. So stand up for the champions, for the champions. Stand up, stand up, stand up for the champions, for the champions. Stand up for the champions.
Always remember Modesta Ofobike, who used to live in this particular residence and is a proof that poverty is not an option or is not an excuse for corruption, and that integrity does has its own reward. Her story and that reaction of many Nigerians is a proof that you need not to dispute. In Abuja, Marvelous Oboman for the Signature Show.
They challenge our jollof rice, our music, and our football. It is time to settle this rivalry. Two great nations, one ticket only to qualify for the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And just one venue to support the Super Eagles against the Black Stars of Ghana in this winner-takes-all playoff finale. All roads lead to the MKO Abiola National Stadium, Abuja on March 29th, 2022 at 6 p.m. to defend our pride as we cheer the Super Eagles to victory. Tickets are on sale now from 2,000 Naira at nairabox.com. You can also point your camera at this QR code and follow the instructions to buy tickets directly from nairabox.com.
Well, before we draw the curtain on today's edition of this program, we must say thank you to a rainmaker.
They say them white, they say you are brown, but only the angels of God is white now. Only the angels of God is white. So long, too long, so long, been too long. Say we've been sitting down for so long. We've been fooled around for too long.
Do we need to say anymore? A true African, a true Nigerian, an artist of great talent. Thank you, Majakodumi Fasheke. And that's our package for the Sunday. My name remains Mwabuze Njoko. Good afternoon.